Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the session this morning. It's a great honor to welcome all of you as we have this conversation today. We are looking at technology in the manufacturing sector and its impact on work. I'll start by sharing a few housekeeping rules that we should try and adhere to. First of all, we request you to keep your mic mute unless you're speaking. We don't want to listen to your background in case also you're discussing confidential issues on your end. So please keep your mic mute. Then feel free to share questions to our speakers through the Q&A and the comments section. I will be responding and addressing those. We shall also have a Q&A session at the tail end of the program, as you can see. So if not all your questions are responded to, we'll also try and respond to them during the Q&A, but if any are carried forward, we'll also get in touch with you and respond to them. So allow me to take this opportunity to recognize the guests present today that have joined us. We have Mr. Joe Musheru, the Cabinet Secretary for Information, Communication, Technology and Youth, who will be joining us. He's joining the link shortly. We have the representative of Dr. Rose Ngugi from KIPRA, represented by Dr. Humphrey. I can see CS. Joe Musheru is already on board. Thank you so much. So we have Dr. Rose Ngugi, the Executive Director of KIPRA, represented herein by Dr. Humphrey Jogu. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have the Ministry of Industry, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Lawrence Parangia, from the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development. Thank you very much for joining. Our chairman, Mr. Mshay Kunye, is also with us today for this session. We welcome you. We have Mr. Kwame Owino, the CEO of the Institute of Economic Affairs, the KM members, economists, industry and government representatives, distinguished guests. It's a pleasure to have you this morning. In the year 2018, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, together with the Overseas Development Institute, ODI, developed a 10-point policy agenda on how to grow the manufacturing sector and create jobs in a digital economy. This was before Corona. We had already started having conversations on how to do this. As industry, we are very cognizant of the fact that physical and digital lines are blurring rapidly, and that globally changing the landscape of manufacturing. So that's something that we have taken note of. So today's forum is really part of our implementation journey of the work we had done with ODI. We seek to bring out very key areas on technology in the manufacturing sector and the impact this is going to have on the future of work. The Institute of Economic Affairs, led by Kwame, is also a very key partner of Kenya Association of Manufacturers in this journey as we continue to understand the global trajectories in digitalization and how they are affecting the manufacturing sector and inclusive growth. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm joined by distinguished panelists who will share their insights on the impact of technology in the manufacturing sector and the future impact on work. So welcome with me, Mr. Mushai Kunyiha, the chairperson of CAM, the Chief Administrative Secretary of the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development, Dr. Humphrey, also joining us from KIPRA, and our Cabinet Secretary of Information, Communication and Technology, Joe Musheru. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'll kick off the session by inviting the KAN Chair, Mr. Mushai Kunyiha, to share his thoughts on this matter. I'll give him 15 minutes to do that. Welcome, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Phyllis. And glad to be here joining you today. Thank you, IEA, as well, for working with us on this joint project. I hope I can be heard. My screen has kind of gone funny. Can you hear me, Phyllis?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. So, yes, thank you very much all. And I want to recognize the presence of our good friend, Honorable Joe Mushero, CS for ICT, and Bwana Lawrence Karanja from our home ministry. We call it our home ministry because they take very good care of us and we feel at home there, of industry, trade, and enterprise development. And also Kipra and all the other guests who are here with us today. So technology in manufacturing, I think, is what the subject is. Now, obviously, all manufacturing has had technology. Basically, since the Stone Age, when we learned how to make stone tools, we were using some form of technology. And really, we are thinking about how do we advance that use of technology. We are always using technology. And the challenge for a manufacturer always is the technology productive enough or competitive enough? Because in a global environment in which we operate in today, your key thing is whether you can be competitive. Does your technology help you make things at a better rate, at a better cost, with less waste than your nearest competitor? And because we live in a global world, your nearest competitor is not just the guy in the shop next to you or in the town nearest you. He's miles away. He could be in China, he could be in India or Thailand, even in the US. You never know. It is now a globalized world and we can buy all this stuff. Again, maybe through the use of technology, you can buy it from anywhere. So for manufacturing, the technology that we are using is always critical in what we are doing. And manufacturing over time has taken different revolutions. We are now talking about the fourth industrial revolution, but permit me to just remind us what the others were as we've gone through this. We had the first one where we started using water and steam. That was the first industrial revolution, mostly in Europe and in the UK. Then the second industrial revolution was when electricity came aboard and people could now use power without necessarily being next to a river. And then we got to the third industrial revolution, which is about electronics and information technology, where we could automate production. And that has been going on, probably since the 50s and 60s and accelerated. But now we're on the fourth, where we're talking about the fusion of technologies. there are certain aspects of it that are there. There's things like additive manufacturing, the Internet of Things, and other such new technologies. There's someone on. Okay, so where all these technologies now come together and create a whole new network effect of things that are really changing and revolutionizing what we are doing in manufacturing. Now, we're already using some of those, and I think the challenge is that for many manufacturers, there are some. Hello? I hope I'm back. So somewhere along this chain of industrial revolution is where most manufacturers are. Hopefully in Kenya now we don't have people on water and steam, but we do know that a lot of people have just, it's getting onto electricity, for instance, is one of the big things which we've been doing. But now also getting onto electronics and information technology. And we are hoping people can use more and more of that, because your goal ultimately is to keep going up this ladder and get, hopefully, eventually to the fourth industrial revolution, where we can actually be more productive, but also crucially more competitive. We know from recent studies, like the UNIDO study on industrial competitiveness, that Kenya, we are not really doing well on our manufacturing side. We rank about 115 in the world, and we have a long way to go to make industrialization a core part of our GDP and our whole industrialization story. We know that was also part of the Big Four agenda, so that government is also focused on this area of how do we get manufacturing to 15% of GDP, because we also know that more manufacturing has a bigger multiplier effect on the economy and would be very useful for us as we go forward. So we think that increasing our productivity and our competitiveness is what is going to help us get up there in what we are, in terms of being globally competitive in manufacturing. Now, we know in Kenya and also East Africa, we've actually succeeded a lot with technology and digitization. Hello? Some interruption again?
Let's mute our mics, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we know what is possible, and that's been a great achievement for us in East Africa in the services sector. So, for instance, we are doing well on mobile money. I think we are leading. Internet penetration is very high. I suppose we'll hear a little bit more about what the actual numbers are from the other speakers, but we know we are doing pretty well on that. So it is possible for us to both leapfrog and do very well, because we actually have the core underlying infrastructure already in place that is going to help us grow in our industrialization. We know already that manufacturers are using these networks for sourcing, for instance, sourcing goods. You can buy things online. Even now, things like ICMS, what we are using with KRA for importation of goods, you can actually do most of your documentation for imports online, so that there is already a lot that is being done online. We can pay our taxes online with the iTax and other such systems. So there is already quite a lot going on the services side. The challenge now is about how do we get this into the production side, in the actual production lines that we are making. How do we use it for market access? Already we are seeing e-commerce is growing, and especially now in pandemic times, it has. We've seen some growth in that, people being able to put their goods on the market through the open marketplaces. Digital purchasing is growing, and we hope that will continue to grow. It will help us, and not only just selling in market here in Kenya, but also with our export markets. And we've been talking also internally about, should we have like an Alibaba of Kenya, where even people who want to import from Kenya, there's a portal they can go to and find who are the suppliers in Kenya and what is made here. So we want to get also now into digitization in the actual manufacturing space. And thankfully, even in these times, and I think there are manufacturers already going through big digitization projects. I have visited personally about 3 or 4 factories that have been installed during this COVID period. And the installation process itself was done virtually because the engineers from the suppliers of the equipment could not come in. But the local engineers were able to, using forums like this, we are doing online information on the internet, they were able to install the equipment and get it to work. So there's already there a skill we are building, and we'll talk a little bit more about the skills we can build internally. But there's also the capacity to actually do that. And some of that equipment can actually be monitored from abroad so that people can say, okay, yes, the settings are now correct because they are connected to the internet. And so that is already happening with manufacturers here. And it's only going to grow because the equipment that we are now buying is all kind of connected into the Internet of Things. Now, all this technology does bring risks for jobs. I think that's usually a challenge. Everybody is worried about, are we going to reduce the jobs? But I think what it does is create new jobs and new opportunities. Like I've mentioned, there were people installing pretty sophisticated equipment here in Kenya, and they were all Kenyans and Kenyan-based. So there is an opportunity for us in Kenya, and we have a huge skills base and a lot of skilled people, engineers, technicians, and so on, who can now grow in that field. Because also we've noticed that our exports in the region are dwindling because whatever we used to export, if we were just exporting plain goods, consumer goods, the regional countries start making those goods as they grow in their industrialization. What we can start exporting now is equipment and the skills to actually implement equipment. We can start making some of these things to a certain level. So there's a huge opportunity as well as the world digitizes and as the world grows in technology. There's a big opportunity for us to start making new equipment, whether it is simple equipment that can be used locally or even more complex equipment that we'll be exporting. We have huge opportunities there. Like Phyllis mentioned, CAM has been working on this digitization, and we did have a program we worked on with the Overseas Development Institute, and we listed down a couple of things which maybe will be shared later around what is possible for us to accelerate this digitization. Like we're saying, we are already digitizing. There's already a lot of pressure and people moving in that direction in their facilities just to improve their productivity and competitiveness, but there's a lot that needs to be done. And already that is being done. So we've talked about the networks. We've seen how we really enhanced our digital connectivity, whether it's mobile, fiber optic, and so on. We're doing reasonably well in Kenya. We've now got a Data Protection Act that has come on board, which is going to help us with data protection. As we know, also as you digitize, the information you're holding starts becoming an issue. And skills upgrading is continuing, and I think that's going to be part of the work. We have programs around TVETs and other such programs. It is going to be important that we have people with the right skills. And the beauty of digitization and so on is that these skills can be picked up pretty easily online, and it is about us just being able to focus and equip people, and then also give them the opportunity to use those skills wherever they can be. So to finalize, I think I've just said that the key thing around technology, what we need to use it for and to focus ourselves on is how do we become more competitive and more productive? Because the competitiveness is where we're going to really, and we continue to struggle because we have to be competitive in the world environment. It's okay that people want to buy Kenya, build Kenya, but if it is costing more, if it is not as good quality, you will always struggle eventually. So we have to get our quality up there and we have to get our productivity up there. And eventually, long term, our goal is to be able to export because we need to be sending out our goods out there to the world, not just in the region. And there's work being done around the AFCFTA, the African Free Trade Area, the EAC, we might have good trade agreements with the US and the UK and the EU. Their markets opened up for us. We have the capacity to send things to them. And that is what we need to be focused on and work on how can we improve our productivity to get there. So thank you very much for that time, and thank you for the opportunity to share, and looking forward to the conversations with the panelists and the other presenters as well. Thank you very much. Over to you, Phyllis.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Chairman. Shai, for sharing the need to leverage on technology for productivity and competitiveness, and some of the things the sector is doing. At this point, I want to move to the Honorable Cabinet Secretary, Joe Musheru. I don't know if he's able to speak at this point, because we want to get his insights on this topic of technology, being a leader in this area. Maybe he'll signal if he can speak now, because when you have CS, he can get called for other duties. So we want to get his insights before he gets busy.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for giving me the time. It is true, in fact, the call I was on just now might be asking me to go and get involved in some activity. But, Chair Mushai, my good friend, and yourself, Phyllis, and all the members that have joined this call, I'm very happy that we are all looking at technology and manufacturing and the areas that we need to focus on. You mentioned in your opening remarks that there's this push, and even Chair talked about it, where if we digitize more, we might actually lose some jobs. But let me say that a lot of the digital work is new. So it's actually going to create more work than reduce. It's going to create more efficiencies. And with more efficiencies, then you hire more and you expand more. And I can say, in my previous job at Google, when I joined, I was there for 8.5 years. I joined when the company had about 10,000 staff. I left when they were at over 100,000. So from a technology point of view, I think when you go into using technology and moving forward, we expect to see more jobs created than jobs lost, especially where we are. We're mostly an agricultural country, and therefore, when it comes to food and eating, I don't expect we're going to have any challenges. That's going to be an area of demand. And even as we automate and as we improve, we will see the demand continue. So agriculture is going to still be a big part of our area. When I look at the technology side, where we focus on, especially as the ministry, and now we have youth also, where we're looking at overall what we can do with technology and youth. The devices we're importing about 40 million to 50 million devices into the country. That number will continue to grow. Chair was talking about the Internet of Things, so the sensors that need to come in. That means we're probably going to get over 1 billion sensors being imported into the country. So if we do not start manufacturing, then we're going to lose out in a very big way, where even coffee, which we plant and we grow and then harvest, we import, process. We were not processing. And if we're not careful, the same thing with technology, we might be importing all the different devices into the country, and therefore we need to be at the forefront of ensuring that we now start on the manufacturing of these devices. I'm happy to say that one big advantage we now have as a country is that at Dedan Kimathi University, we've started semiconductor manufacturing. And in fact, this last month, we started our first exports of semiconductor, these are the chips, to the US. And we'll shortly be doing the same even to Japan. These are things that, they were almost made of science fiction, but now as a country, we are seeing them happening. And as Mushai has said, the chairman, the issue we were having is this factory was set up during COVID time. And the engineers that were meant to come from the US to set this up could not come. And the local people, the University of technology at Kimathi has skilled people. They were able to set it all up and make it work. So it's a homegrown area, and we hope that now with the SGR and the MGR put in place, we can start getting even the rare earth minerals and others from Kwale and across the country, all these minerals, and we can take them now and see a huge manufacturing base being set up there at Dedan Kimathi. We've also seen in various parts of the country the electronics assembly first. We started this with the devices for the digital literacy program, the tablets that were issued, but we've seen that has gone now even into laptops, and we are seeing the now electronics manufacturing of TVs, of smart meters, of telephones, and all this is really important for us as a country because we're going digital in a very big way. The government has put a lot of investment on energy. So, we have over 80% now of clean energy, geothermal energy that is available for manufacturing. So we've seen even in places like Konza, the institutions that are setting up have access to good quality power. And the pricing that has been now given for some of the manufacturing, for instance, in some of the industrial parks that have been set up, Naivasha and so on, you're talking of 5 US cents, which is fairly competitive compared to other parts of the country, and competitive as you look at regionally. So these areas of manufacturing, the country is moving in a great direction. Recently, we were with the president at Manyani, where he unveiled some of the security projects that have been ongoing, and where we as a country have significantly invested on the technology side. On just manufacturing, we've started manufacturing some of our light weapons. Those that saw the papers at the time, they must have seen we have our own guns, and they look very scary and are very effective. And we're using those, and again, manufactured locally by our youth. And that's been done actually here in the country using a lot of our technologies. But more importantly, we are also doing the same on drones. So we're moving into areas, and I think as we expand, these are all new areas for the country, and therefore they are creating more work and allowing us to move forward. And I'll give an example of how we are also integrating technology with the different groups. So one area that I've been working on with the youth is the border borders. As you know, the State Department of Youth Affairs is now within the Ministry of ICT. And, we have got 1.4 million border borders in the country. They, they earn about 700 shillings per day on average, meaning their net worth, their revenues is about 357 billion. Border borders are larger than counties. They're larger than Safaricom, Airtel. They're larger than many banks. So they are massive. But if they are brought together collectively, then there are many things that they can do. So one of the things we've been working with them on is that they can also start producing their own border borders here in the country versus just importing. So they start manufacturing them here. And with that, we are tying it up with all the logistics that's required so that we can use them to build our own Alibabas and being able to put them on a technology platform, and we can have logistics that we manage for ourselves. So this area is actually moving quite well, and we have seen even the industry of where salons are and barbers and so on. There's a lot of products that are now being manufactured locally. The only challenge is some of the laws have been bringing products from China and other places. But as we organize ourselves, we are seeing that there's more and more jobs and work being created through this. One important law is the Data Protection and Privacy Law, and the Data Commissioner is now in place in Kenya. And what that has allowed us now to do is that many companies out there that have been looking for workers, online workers and freelancers, are now being able to work with Kenya. and especially with the Huduma number, where you can be able to provide the necessary trust, that you know this is the person, this is where they are, you're giving them their digital signature. We're beginning to see that we're exporting a lot of the skills even out, and regionally we can see that these areas are going to grow. So I would say the government and the president are fairly committed to moving Kenya forward, and especially with the big four on manufacturing. My ministry is working hand in hand with the industry and the rest of cabinet to make sure that we see this growth. If we do not start manufacturing and adding value to even some of our raw materials, then we will be lost. So let me end there, and thank you so much for inviting me again to this very important discussion and dialogue. And I look forward to getting as much information as possible as we discuss. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana, Honorable John Sheru. I think your input has been quite exciting, just to listen to the different things happening, the opportunities, what is happening with the semiconductors, security equipment, borders. I think what you're trying to do is just to ensure that even as we digitalize, as we move into technology, that we use this as an opportunity to grow our local industry. So I'm quite impressed by what you're doing, and also from a policy space, the data protection law and the different policies that are being put in place, and trying to have the digital signatures to build trust. Very impressive. Thank you very much for your input, and please stay on. It would be interesting to listen to what is coming next. Allow me to welcome a friend of ours, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Lawrence Parangia, from the Ministry of Industry and Enterprise Development, to share with us the thoughts from the Ministry of Industry. Thank you. Karibu.
Thank you, Phyllis. I'm trying to turn on my camera.
We can see you now. You're now on.
Good. Thank you for the invitation, and apologies on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Betty Maina. She is in another meeting which is going on as we speak, and I was late by a few minutes because there was another meeting which was coinciding with this meeting. For the members who are participating in this webinar, first, the choice of the topic, I think, is extremely appropriate at in this era and today, because looking at the manufacturing, technology, and work, those are key pillars in our Vision 2030. And when we were working, when Vision 2030 was being developed, we have, after Vision 2030 was prepared, the government came up with various other policies which are supposed to be enablers to enable our country achieve the status of being an industrialized country by 2030. Further, our objective is to achieve 15%, a contribution of 15% to the GDP by the year 2022. And everything we have come up with has been geared towards manufacturing and industrialization and technology. And we have about 5 policies which are already being implemented. The first one is National Industrialization Policy, and it places technology at a very high level. We have Kenya Industrial Transformation Program. We have our trade policy, Buy Kenya and Build Kenya policy, Export Promotion Policy, and SME policy. If you go through all those policies we have come up with, we look at it, what will be the role of technology towards achieving Vision 2030? What will be the role of technology towards implementation of those policies? Again, we also have some of our enablers, and those enablers have also embraced technology. For instance, we have KILDI, which has been incubating SMEs and other industrialists, and also training them on the use of the appropriate technology. We have KIE, and then micro and small. All these organizations have embraced technology, and one of their main role is to train the entrepreneurs they are incubating on the use of appropriate technology. But coming to where we are today, after COVID-19, we realize that those who had not adopted technology suffered most. For instance, the factories which had automated their operations and had minimal human interaction, they continue to operate almost at 100%. Whereas those who had not embraced technology, they had to lower their output because of the raw input. Because when you ask for social distancing and the rest, then that means the number of people who can work in a factory had to go down, and therefore the productivity had to be affected. But as Mushai and CS Michelle has said, even with the technology, it comes up with its own advantages. It doesn't mean that you lose the job, because it is just a matter of transferring where people will be working. That means because people who are working who are producing the sorry, I think there is some interruption. I think for those people who are working in the area that is
Please mute your mics. Kindly mute.
Okay, I think that's okay. We are saying it is a matter of transfer of where the place of work. If it is where the people who are embracing robots, even if you replace a human being with a robot, then you transfer that skill who are producing the robots, and then from the robots, the people who are also producing the raw materials for the robots, the people who are also in IT, who are that is another area we are going to work. Therefore, it doesn't mean that if we embrace technology, we are going to lose work. Actually, more often than not, the opportunities and chances are going to increase. Therefore, as a ministry, we are there, especially urging manufacturers. We have been training the SMEs and asking them to engage, to embrace technology, and telling them that it doesn't have to be physical work, even because looking at the definition, work has two elements, the physical and the mental. Therefore, we are asking them to engage the mental part more than the physical, and that is what we are calling embracing technology. As I conclude, I wish to thank KAM and the Institute of Economic Affairs and the counterparts from other government departments and KIPRA for setting out the priorities for the manufacturing sector, and we can leverage on technology to grow the sector further. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Lawrence Parangia, for sharing your thoughts and ideas around technology and how it has impacted business continuity during COVID, and the role the ministry is continuing to play to see how we can embrace technology for competitiveness. And also assuring people that jobs will not be lost, other opportunities will be created. But how do we ensure we have a policy space that enables these opportunities to happen locally? So allow me to welcome next KIPRA, Dr. Humphrey Njogu, who leads on technology research. He'll be sharing some insights on behalf of KIPRA. Karibu sana, Dr. Njogu.
So thank you very much, Phyllis.
Yeah, welcome.
I hope you can be able to hear my voice.
Yes, you can hear you, but maybe speak a bit louder.
Yes. Yes. I think I have an issue with the quality of the bandwidth. Maybe perhaps I think I can just maybe try to switch the video off. So thank you so much. I think maybe this is much better. I think I can just go on. Well, I just to share my insights about technology, and particularly from a research point of view. Yes, I think technology is quite critical. This is actually concurring with what CS Michelle and what the chair was saying, that without technology we can't be able to do more, or we can't be able to do, we all know that technology contributes quite a lot in terms of bringing efficiency. It also contributes a lot in terms of in terms of mass production. But where we were, like maybe 30, 40 years ago, we were not able to do much. Today, we are able to do quite a lot because we use technology to facilitate we are at the point of being competitive, unlike where we were some years ago. To the forum that the adoption of the technology at the manufacturing level has also moved quite well, and I think we are closely mirroring to what we see. CS Mushero mentioned that have been able to bring the connectivity quite well in terms of families or households are able to use technology. Even at the manufacturing, I think closely indicate that we're also moving or making some good progress. Again, I also wanted to bring to the attention of the forum that technology has also been how the evolving of the technology. So many years ago, maybe around 100 years ago, we were using we had a very manual systems. With the advent of electricity, we went the mechanical way, so we were able to mechanize the way we do things. Later on, around the 1940s, 30s, we started now slowly processes, and the first computers were manufactured around the 1930s and 1940s. But since then, we have also seen huge development for technology. And I think 1970s, we started seeing the first personal computer in 1970s. 1980s, we saw the internet, and I think 90s, the internet became a boom. So today, heavy use of the internet, and not just connecting that people can use, but you're also seeing where we are seeing devices can also be able to each other. So the era of the Internet of Things, and this is what the chair was mentioning. And again, we have also even seen that we can still be able to move quite fast in terms of even embracing IoT in the manufacturing. So we have the industrial IoT. So created specifically to support a country. We have embraced technology, but I think I would say not so much. And why am I saying so is we have people who have conducted research, and the preliminary studies indicate that most of the manufacturing firms have computers, and these computers they're not just the standalone computers; they are connected to the internet. And we are talking of around I think around actually 91% of computers that are being used by manufacturing firms are connected to the internet. I think this is quite impressive. Again, even in terms of having ICT units, most of the manufacturing firms that we interacted with, and I'm talking about that was recently done in a period of talking from May to and I want to say that from the responses that we got, we have we interviewed more than about 100 firms, and we have more than 50%, actually 56% of the firms they have created dedicated ICT units. So I think it's quite impressive. And again, I also want to mention that we also went ahead to ask the firms whether they were aware of the fourth industrial revolution. And 44% of these companies or firms indicated that they are aware of the revolution. I think this is quite impressive with the sector that that are aware of the direction where the technology is taking us. And I also want to mention to the forum that I think we have more than 6 firms indicated that they have a competent ICT or technology, technologies who are able to support their operations. Quite impressive. And among the areas that where technology is being applied here locally, we were able to note that around 25% of the manufacturing firms are using computer-aided manufacturing tools, and around 30% of design. So they're able to design their solutions or their products, or they use these to support their operations. So I think for me, what I'm actually saying is that we are not starting from scratch. Already we have some solid background that we can rely on to start now heavily using technology. Again, also we also noted that facing some other challenges to do with technology, because 69% of the firms that we interviewed indicated that they're experiencing some cyber threats. And this cyber threats really mean malicious programs like viruses, like worms. So they're experiencing these kind of attacks. So, and I think that's maybe where we may also need to reflect on. I know Cabinet Secretary mentioned that even from a policy point of view, we've done something. But I think there are some gaps that I think we need now to see where we can be able to address. And some of the areas that I think we may need now to start working on. One is boosting up or encouraging firms to heavily using IT, because you can, from the statistics, we only have less than 30%, meaning that 70% of the firms are not heavily using IT or technology to support their manufacturing processes. So I think this is a gap that we also to see how we can properly target and address it quite well. Again, also even in terms of firms or just generally the industries are facing a shortage in terms of digital skills. And this is maybe an area that I think we might need to start looking at, so that we're able now to move as a country. And just like the way we've seen the household moving quite well, embracing technology, we could also manufacturing, so that we're able to embrace technology, and we can actually be more competitive than we are today. So I think those are my few comments I wanted to make. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Njoku, for just sharing some insights from this. We will follow up on the research so that we circulate it to the participants. But thank you all for the insights, very useful. One of the studies I've looked at on technology was by UNIDO. They had an Industrializing in the Digital Age study, where they say that just 10 countries account for 90% of the global patents and 70% of the exports associated with advanced digital production. That's really the technology around the fourth industrial revolution. So the challenge is to see how countries that are laggards and that are slowly uptaking technology or producing are able to catch up. Because if we are not able to, what will happen is we will simply widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So for a sustainable and inclusive future, there's need to really see how we carry along other countries into the fourth industrial revolution. So at this point, allow me to hand over to Kwame Owino to take us through the question and answer session. Karibu sana, Kwame.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So we've had, I think, 4 interesting presentations. The first by, of course, Mr. Kunyiha, And I think he's traced the history of industrial revolutions, bringing us to I think we are on the doors of the fourth industrial revolution, and then situated it with how it helps to meet Kenya's challenges generally, and also obviously as a critical or a strategic question for Kenya's manufacturing sector. Then we had C.S. Musheru. I think he's emphasized the fact that digital work obviously is not new in Kenya. Largely, or rather it has been here in Kenya, and what we need to do would be think about it in terms of value addition. I think the critical thing that he said and all the others emphasized is usually the tension between new, whether it's digitalization or industrial manufacturing, and what that means for jobs. And I'm glad that he and of course the other presenters provided a good argument that actually on the net effect of use of technology in manufacturing would be to add jobs, partly because we are starting from a low base. But I think the more important argument that gets forgotten is that most of the industries in which manufacturing technology is going to be applied in Kenya are new. So in the net effect, they'll create more jobs. I think that's a really, really important thing to take home. Also mentioned the question about Dedan Kimathi and that semiconductors manufacturing is going on. I'd seen this covered in the press as well, and so I'm glad that you confirm it, that exports are going to the US already and to Japan soon. So maybe one of the things we should do is to look up those and say, well, how do you benchmark Kenyan semiconductors? It's not just that semiconductors are exported, which is a good thing. It shows an escalation of the value chains, but also that what the quality is and how it measures against the best in the world would be a useful thing, because that's how the competitiveness that Mr. Kunyiha spoke about would be covered. There's also the question about electronics, and I think exports from Kenya, or rather electronics assembly, TVs, phones, and smart meters. I'd heard about smart meters, a little bit about phones. I hadn't heard about TVs, so maybe I need to start looking for that as well. So that's also useful. Now, the reason I cite all these, of course, is just that you can show, or rather it illustrates the fact that technology in manufacturing would go in different directions from consumer goods, in some cases enabling processes and efficiencies across the line. So the possibility of Kenya hopping onto a couple of value chains, I think the potential exists, both for domestic exports, for regional exports, which has been Kenya's strong point, and which of course a level of competition is rising, but also being able to export semiconductors, whatever their level, to Japan and the US would be a really, really new door for Kenya to think about. I think I need to mention as well that he talked about drones and other armaments manufacturing in Kenya and all that. Interesting. I think we should look at those. But obviously, drones and their application in all sectors of the economy, from service provision, in manufacturing itself, obviously, and their tools of manufacturing, in addition to the fact that they're products of manufacturing, and even in agriculture, I think is something that cannot be overstated. And he concluded by talking about integrating technologies across sectors, I think, which is a useful. Then Joe spoke about the fact that I think there's a couple or rather survey in which 44% of companies indicated awareness of fourth industrial revolution. Interesting. I think that needs to be raised. One of the things that I didn't see, and perhaps he mentioned it, he talked about computer-aided manufacturing tools and design already in use in Kenyan companies, which is a good thing to also consider. I think if you put all these together, it's showing that the question about the potential and the possibilities of fourth industrial revolution in Kenya are not necessarily lost to manufacturers. That's a good thing. I'm not too sure what amount of it is basically aided by policy, because I think the example C.S. Musheru gave was actually government investing itself. When I thought that the better way is actually to ensure that it crowds in private sector investment. But perhaps maybe that's a debating point, and obviously government is trying to see the sector and then will start. So I think against all those presentations, I think we come to the time. Oh yes, and Lawrence also mentioned the question about the potentials, the awareness, and obviously how domestic contributions in terms of policy would help to strengthen this. What all speakers mentioned is the fact that, look, the fourth industrial revolution is here. I think it has potentials. There'll be competition without doubt, but at the same time, there's a possibility for Kenya to not only fashion policy in a way that ensures that we make the best of it, but also provides us with an opportunity to actually scale up what Kenya is already good at, which was nice to hear. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I open up this for questions and answers. I hope CS Michel is here. Yes, he seems to still be here. So maybe we could start with questions for him because he'd alerted us to the fact that he might be leaving. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I'll give you an opportunity to ask, and we can ask 3 questions at a time, and then have CS Michel answer the questions. So if it's possible, if he needs to leave, he can leave, and then we can have the other questions for Mr. Kuniha, for Lawrence, and Humphrey. Any questions? Okay, so when you answer questions, please just turn your microphone on and your camera for the duration of the question. You ask the question very directly, and then we can let it be. So I saw a question from Emmanuel. Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for very good presentations. My question was, it was very impressive to hear about the various developments taking place in terms of Kenya's technological output. So I wanted to understand the level of sophistication that Kenyan, like say, indigenous manufacturers themselves are showing. So, for example, when we say that Kenya is producing drones, how much of it are we producing? How much of the materials are we molding ourselves? Say, for example, how much of the gut of the machine are Kenyans themselves able to produce? And then also, how many drones are we producing? And then also, there was a comment, and I think I also saw that on the papers a few weeks ago about Kenya producing its own arms, which is pretty impressive. Again, if we could get some commentary on just how much of this weapon are we manufacturing ourselves, where is it happening? And yes, so that's my question. I hope that's clear.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. And thank you, Emmanuel. I've taken that question. I think that would be for CS Michel. Yes, Mr. Omolo, please turn on your camera and then you can ask your question.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have 3 questions. My first question was, we know that many countries in their first phase of initial industrialization have relied on imported technology. And those countries have also given specific incentive for the sectors that they want to enter in. We know that countries like South Korea and the rest, they started with the light industries, and the government provided specific incentive for the industry that they were interested in. For Kenya, do we have specific industry that we want to start developing, or are we just, everywhere? Because it's good to start where, like in textile or maybe in leather industry, to give incentive for those specific industries so that they can import the technology and then later development. So that's the first question, where we have specific area that we're interested. The second is that in many of these countries, they have created a platform for collaboration between government, industry, and academia for the purpose of commercializing the scientific research and innovation. Have we created a platform where we can have industry, scientific institutions like KIPRA and other bodies for commercializing the research that we do in country and innovation? We see so many innovations, and we are not seeing them, being commercialized. The third and last is that how many of our local manufacturing has got internal R&D, research and development department? Because while we are relying on imported technology, we must also start developing our own indigenous technology, and this will only be possible if we have our own internal research and development institution in the private firm and also government. I saw that the government here still spend less than 1% of GDP on research and development, and on their policy, the science and technology innovation, they are aiming at 2% of GDP on research and development. How is the government working on that direction to ensure that we have 2% of of our GDP for research and development so that we can start developing our indigenous technology and innovation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Molo. Next, James Brika. James, please ask your question. James, I can see your hand is up. Okay. He seems not to be here, so I'll lower his hand. So those, I mean, there are three questions. Let me ask PS Bisheru to respond to the one about drone numbers and whether there are specific incentives for specific industries which government has chosen as being the leaders in for Kenya. Please go ahead, sir.
No, thank you very much, and I'm glad the CAS of industry is also here. So I think we can share this. We operate on one government approach in the thing. So I think Emmanuel's question on level of sophistication and where we are as a country, we have started where we're importing some of the components. For instance, whether it is for the light arms and even whether it is for the drones. But what we're now doing is that we started doing design that we're now giving to the semiconductor manufacturers so that we can actually start designing our own chipset that we can produce. We're producing world-class products because we're exporting now to the US. Samsung, Sony, and all these people are actually now buying from here. So it's really a matter of getting the industry to grow. We're expecting that even as we produce the semiconductors, they're going to go into the SMT lines that are currently being done. And then other, manufacturing, like the moldings and plastics that are required, so that we can eventually do everything at once, all in country. But for the moment, what we are doing is that we're seeing that people are importing different parts. When we started with the digital literacy program, we insisted that, they would get the SDKs here, but, in terms of assembly, it would all have to be done locally. Now that we're starting to manufacture, the policies that we put in place, including taxation, require then that we default to what is being manufactured in the country. And so there are specific tax incentives that are already in place. When I look at the manufacturing that's going on electronics, we have a standard operating framework agreement that was put in place with the different companies to ensure that they're getting the benefits that they require. But at the same time, with what we have with the SEZs and EPZs, especially for textiles and any of the kind of exports that we're doing, all those are part of the tax incentive packages that are being put in place to ensure we see growth. Value addition is a very, very big part for Kenya, and where we can actually replace imports with our current production would be great. We want to take advantage of the European and American markets. As you know, we've just finished, our negotiations with the UK, so that then even post the EU, when Brexit happens, we still have full access to the UK market. We're already discussing with the US on a free trade area, and that's going to allow us to have an even bigger and larger market. We are also part of the Continental Free Trade Area, African, which then means we have a much bigger market. So as government, we're not only creating policies that will allow for the manufacturing to happen, but we also have policies for export so that there are markets out there that will be able to grow. So incentives have been specific in some cases to companies, and others are broadly given. And I think probably the CAS industry will be able to give the documentation, because there are very many. I think when you look at the Big Four agenda manufacturing, it's a full document with all the plans and all the incentives of how we're going to get to see the growth. So it's not just not one-offs. And we are investing quite heavily also in ensuring we're protecting intellectual property and the many treaties that we've signed to ensure that we protect our IP, so that then we can begin to respond. And when we do the R&D, which is a very big part, then it's not all lost and gone out. So we are investing in that area, and I hope that the documents which we have to do with the Big Four and especially on manufacturing, the Ministry of Industry will be able to share with the teams here. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, CS. We'll now go to CS Parangia. I think there are a couple of questions. One of those, of course, what incentives are there? And then the second one is James Wicker's question about are there some kinds of formal collaboration between government, industry, and academia? I think already, because we mentioned, CS Mushero already mentioned about Dedan Kimathi University. Obviously, that's a government initiative connecting to private sector, but perhaps you could help us by elaborating on that. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you. First, I think CS Mushero has clearly answered the question of the incentives. We have, especially the people setting up to the industries in Kenya, we have two components. The ones who want to do it for export, we have the export processing zone, and we have various tax incentives, and not just on the capital, not just on the tax per se, but also on tools and equipment. When you are importing tools and equipment, we always
well, looks like something has happened to the CS's connection. I'll try to. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I was saying again on the that was EPZA. Now, Special Economic Zone Authority, we deal with we have been setting up, and we are setting one in Naivasha, another one in Dongokundu, and we have about 3 other which are privately owned. Under the Special Economic Zone Authority, we look for setting up factories which will act as substitutes for import. And there are various incentives. First is tax. 2 is land, where we give out land to, because one of the biggest hindrances to investors setting up their factories is the cost of land in our country. Therefore, we are able to give them land. And as CS Mushero has said, in Naivasha, we are giving them one of the cheapest tax power tariffs in the country. So that is another incentives. And we are doing all this to try to see whether we can get, we can replace the import with locally manufactured goods. And then at a special economic zone, whatever we produce in excess, we allow people to export to other countries. Therefore, they can set up their factories here. Another thing we do is when they are bringing expatriates, we allow them to come with some expatriates. On condition, there will be transfer of technology or knowledge to the locals, so that you commit yourself that, yes, I've brought an expatriate into this area because we don't have one, but within this and this and this number of years, I'll be able to assist to transfer the technology to the locals. So that is another area we are collaborating. On the issue of the collaboration between the academia and the industries, this happened mainly when we arrange for such forums. We also go to, for instance, if you go to Kildi, the Kenya Institute of Research and Development, we have researchers there, and we link them together with the academia, so that for those who are coming with a new invention, we always collaborate through Kildi, and then we adopt that technology and assist to transfer it to the manufacturers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll go to, there's a question by James, and I think this goes to Mr. Kunyiha. What's your view about what's the level of local R&D that manufacturing sector, I mean your colleagues in the sector are investing in, and how they ask for, I paraphrase, what additional help would government give to ensure that the total amount of R&D in manufacturing, obviously this sector and technology generally grows? So let's have you respond.
Thanks, Kwame. And the question, I think it's a very interesting question about, the whole research and development space. I think, like was alluded to earlier, one of the challenges is also what we're doing with the institutes of higher education, the universities and so on, how we are linked with them. Because even globally, when you look at where most of the R&D is done, It may be paid for by companies, but it is being done in universities where people are there full time, because also the cost of setting up, real full-time R&D is difficult. And of course, R&D comes at different levels. There is the R&D that people are doing to design, say, a new chair. I want to see how I can fold my metal and make it work better, and which I'll put into my production line. And that, I think, is going on in a lot of businesses where they're being innovative. But then there is now the R&D of where you're creating new materials, whether you are, we've just seen globally the new vaccines being created and that kind of thing. And that, I think, the challenge we have in Kenya is the size of our enterprises. We don't have the resource and the depth of pocket to, I think if you look at what these R&D, what has been spent like on the, these corona vaccines on almost each of those companies, like a Safaricom in itself, the entire revenue of Safaricom. So the ability to do that is challenging. But on the other hand, I think where we can get some more encouragement, and I think there's a big opportunity there also for investment, because we have the technical skills and capability available. There is no reason why that global R&D cannot be done here locally, because there are some things that should be done. There are some kind of experiments that people could be running. And when we look at things like now additive manufacturing, where you can actually, this is 3D printing, you can actually do some of that R&D. So there's a big opportunity there. And like was noted, government, and then again, we need to look at what are the incentives. How do we help people do the R&D? Because it will give you a big competitive advantage in the market if you have your own patented product. At the moment, I do not believe, and I'm not very sure, maybe we'll hear from the economists or the accountants, I don't know that we have investment write-downs on R&D expenditure, etc., that would help you incentivize a company to spend more money on R&D. That would be helpful for our market. So there is some R&D being done. In summary, there is R&D being done, but at a basic level on, say, production and the way you can be more competitive or more productive in what you're doing. There is some basic R&D going on there, but the real deep R&D that gives you a benefit, not much is going on in our country. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Let me ask Dr. Humphrey Njogu, anything to add on government, academia, and private sector collaboration, or on actually R&D policy and how government could ensure that R&D continues to yield, assets and property that could help private sector in manufacturing and competitiveness. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Kwame, for the question. Yes, just to add, in addition to what Musai has made, from a policy point of view, I think we have a draft policy with NACOSTI, especially to support the 2%, to effectively be able to ensure that the 2% goes to all along. We have been, working towards having 1% of the, the GDP affected in our places. But I think all has not been well because of many competing. And likely because of one of the reasons is because of we don't actually prioritize research and development. We have some, we have interest in R&D. You may find that again also the cost is also not, the funding is also not available. Yes, I think this is an area that we need to work on and expect the other countries. I think the participant was referring to the South Korean and also a number of Asian countries that have clearly embraced the R&D, and we could still do, I think we have an opportunity to still improve the way we do R&D, so that we're able to, to ensure that products that we are going to manufacture, they are able to fit well in the market. And I think I also like to mention that, as a country, we have also been having an issue. Okay, we don't have a very good collaboration with the way space of R&D. So, for example, you find that universities who are doing the academia, they don't, necessarily working very closely with the manufacturing. We've seen in the countries like South Korea, where academia play a critical role. They work closely with the industries, and I think this is what we might need to think about. How do you ensure, especially the academia, because this is where the knowledge is, we able to ensure that the knowledge that is generated is tapped into, improving our products. I'm happy because I think there's some areas that we could, we can report something positive happening. Look at what is happening with, with ICT. So we've seen some universities, they have an innovation center. I think there's also the same case also with Stanford. They also have an innovation center where they are able to pick some ideas that students are coming up with, link them to the industry. And I think I was actually reviewing some of the reports from these innovation hubs, and I can tell you that we are doing quite well, because some of these innovations are actually picked up by not just by the local manufacturing firms, but I also again even outside the country. Yes, I think we could borrow, or we could learn locally here what some of these some of the areas like able to replicate, that we can be able to move quite fast on, in terms of adopting this. But anyway, I also agree that we need to fast track the development and implementation of the R&D policy, which is being championed by NACOSI, so that we can clearly guide all the actors in terms of at least 2% of the GDP being spared for the R&D. Some of the comments that I wanted to share on the issues of the collaboration and the support of the R&D work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just about 10 more minutes, so maybe I'll take a couple more questions. Does any of you have questions? Please raise your hand so that we can ask you to, while we still have our guests here. So there's a question from, sorry, it's not mine. No. I don't see any other questions. And let me look in the chat box. There's none as well in the conversation box. So what I'll do then is, okay, fine. So
there's a question.
Is there? Okay, let me check.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Philip Malala.
Okay.
To Dr. Yeah.
I can't see the question. Is it on the chat box?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, let me read it. One minute, please. Let me read it. I can't see it. I can't see the question. Is Malala here? So you can ask the question. Just ask the question, because I can't see it on the chat box.
Okay. Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. So basically, my question is around from the research side of things. We know that with the move towards digitization and automation, we also have skill gaps, which can be at a macro level, maybe at an organizational level, but sometimes a micro level, but sometimes also at a macro level, that there's some skills that we might not have. So I wanted to understand whether in the research we've tried to look at what is because the CS talked a lot about empowering the youth to do online work, but how does the manufacturing sector view remote work, or what is commonly referred to as the gig economy? And maybe to extend that question is, what risks would or fears do they think that should be addressed probably at a policy level so they can be able to embrace gig economy or remote work? Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Philip. So basically, you're just asking about what risks and opportunities come with remote work. I think that's the broader digitalization, though we were speaking about manufacturing today. But nevertheless, I think the CS could still answer that. The CS and Dr. Parangia could also, Lawrence Parangia could still answer that. So because we are finishing, what I'll do is I'll reverse the order of presentations. And so this time I'll ask Mushai to answer your questions and give us his closing remarks. Then I'll go down to Dr. Njogu and then to CS Karanja, and I'll ask Honorable Mushai to finish up. Shall I start with Mushai, please?
Okay, thanks. So, that's a very interesting question around the gig economy and what the impact is. But I think one of the things we are seeing with the fourth industrial revolution, and why they call them revolutions, is because they change things, and they change a lot of things. So we must also be aware that the changes coming will be big and massive, and we need to restructure accordingly. So for instance, this historically people were, and when manufacturing was growing, people got into this thing of having a comfortable job, being a member of a union, and having a pension for life coming out of that. But increasingly, across the world, that model is not going to work. So that now your pension may not be necessarily tied to your business, because I think fundamentally you still need to save for your retirement. When your retirement is also another issue, and whether you retire or you go to another job, another career. So you still need to think about those things, and policy needs to adjust to the new circumstances that are coming in. For instance, the other area we've been engaging with and will become increasingly big is like standards. So if I do additive manufacturing of, say, a ball bearing or a piece of equipment, does that meet KEBS standard? And what does, KEBS does not have a standard for that, because KEBS standard was based on a particular manufacturing process. So we do need to change quite a few things to be able to catch up with this. So it's not just on the labor side, also on the technology, the standard side, the regulation side, that is going to help us meet these things. And I think we still have good objectives in terms of protecting labor. For instance, people should be, they should have some sort of legal protections, but they are going to have to change, because they can no longer be the same protections that they had when they were working in a production line, with other people at the same time. It is very difficult to work from home in manufacturing, because, these things tend to be processes where one person does something followed by another, and that has been a challenge even during these COVID times. But there are aspects that are being done from home, the design. There's equipment now that can be managed remotely. So there are aspects that can be done that way, but there is still a need to be there physically. Of course, in the developed world, and some of it is beginning to happen, there's robotics that is beginning to come in, which will again change how many people are actually on the factory floor. But there will still be somebody to make that robot, to fix that robot. There will still be opportunity for work in that place. So finally, it's just to say that, yes, we are on the cusp of a revolution again, re-emphasizing that point, and we are going to be changing things. So it is important for us to be prepared for it. And it gives us an opportunity as well, because we, to a large extent, we missed the last industrial revolutions, the first, second, third. It was an accident of history and geography that we were not able to participate. There is nothing stopping us now from participating in the fourth industrial revolution, and we can participate better, and that can really change quite a little bit of our fortunes and the future that we're looking at, engaging our youth so that they're able to also be, citizens of the world and compete in the world like everybody else. So there's a big opportunity. We just need to be prepared for it, start investing for it, and create the policy and tax regime and environment that is going to encourage this to go on. Thank you very much, Kwame.
Thanks. Dr. Njogu?
Okay, thank you so much, Kwame. My closing remarks will be, I think we, following the discussion that we have had, we can see technology is very critical. We can't afford to be left behind. We need this technology so that we can be able to improve, everything, not just manufacturing. So it's quite critical. Good. Now, I think we have seen that as a country, we have some bits of it. We have prepared somehow to adopt these emerging technologies, which I think is quite good. But again, we need to do more, because you see, the awareness is obviously good, because for the industrial revolution, it's 44%. But you see now there is between having an awareness and actually, having the actual technologies in our manufacturing, sites. So I think this is we need now to translate this awareness into a more practical, solutions, so that we're able to improve the way we do manufacturing. Yes, we also need to invest more in terms of our digital capacity, skills, again, also infrastructure, because they are very critical to improve our manufacturing capacity. I also wanted to say that I think as a country, following the statistics that we had for the census 2019, it's actually surprising to see that only 4% of the households in this country participate in e-commerce. So I think for me, when I look at this 4%, I'm actually seeing a huge potential manufacturing firms. So, and I think this is we have actually a 96% gap that we need to see how we can use technology and and help this in trade using technology. And recently is telling me that a company that or a firm that ever use technology is 10 times likely to export. So what that means is that a firm that does not use technology is also likely that it's not cannot be able to export. So using technology, the more we are likely to export. That's what we all are aspiring to achieve in the manufacturing agenda. And especially on the e-commerce. I think as we look at our policy and legal framework, we have several gaps that that will need to be fixed in terms of in terms of recruiting an enabling environment for us to participate fully in e-commerce. And lastly is there is an aspect of standards, which I think so we also need to, as we embrace technology, we also need again to ensure that we also conform to what to what standards or standards are telling us to. Because you see here, as we think of we actually we actually progressing to move not just our local market, target. We need to target the broader market, and I think we can't do that if we have not integrated the aspect of the standards in the way we do the manufacturing, and and even all the tools that you're going to use, all the technologies, they're going to help in helping us to boost our trade. So thank you so much.
Thanks, sir. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I think I'll start with my concluding remarks about the short-term contracts there. That's what the gig economy. I think what is happening now because of this technological advancement and transformation, the traditional mode of engaging labor has completely changed because sometimes the technology is changing day by day. Therefore, if you have to engage somebody, that person must also be moving with the technology. That's why sometimes you are finding companies recruiting people on short-term basis because they need, that is the need for that time. But this is something which is going to change, and it is it's a big call to the, especially to the innovators, so that those who are innovating, what can you do with the technology so that you become an investor, as CS Michelle said, about looking at the people like the boda people. Can they think of not just being riding the motorcycles, but being owners of capital, being investors? The second part, and which we have now learned, especially during the COVID times, is on the e-commerce. The traditional way of doing business is going to change. There will be any break to that. That is going to change, and therefore it is a high time that people in the manufacturing sector also think of how they will be marketing and selling their goods using or adapting the e-commerce. And finally, it's the opportunity which is presenting itself on the people who are producing the equipment which are being used in the industries. That is a modern technology. That is another area for manufacturers, and looking at it, how we can set up those factories locally so that we can supply the local demand, which is growing day by day. Because seeing what is happening, I think it's either you change or you be left out, because this is the era of transformation. Therefore, there is a huge opportunity for me, for the people who are investing in technology, especially now the suppliers of technology. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. So we've seen that, I think, as Mr. Mushai said, the fourth industrial revolution is here. For both historical reasons of geography and all that, we missed, I think, the African continent, and obviously Kenya therefore missed that opportunity. We must ride this new wave. It will require preparation. Technology is changing. It will require some kind of retooling on the part of private sector. But given that opportunities are available, I think most of private sector is probably looking at it already and trying to retool. The most important thing is for the public sector to actually provide that policy space. And to my mind, in the area of R&D, I think private sector, naturally, obviously, because their costs have to be internalized, will carry out research in the areas that are essential to their products. So that will be very, very specific. So there's a role for government to pay to complete that line through the basic research, primary research, which is carried out at the universities. So a specific commitment to funding university level or that kind of high level research for conceptual development, which can then be exploited by private sector, I think is still government's responsibility. And we need to think about, rather, I'm glad that CS Michel and obviously this Lawrence have emphasized that they understand government knows that challenge. So perhaps just dedicating more resources in that in terms of people, but also supporting universities to undertake that research would be a critical part about how we go on from here. The place of exports in Kenya and the rising competition and locking into global or regional value chains is essential, and my view is that better participation will come from private sector, understanding those objectives, those opportunities and taking those opportunities. And the final point is that every technology comes with its own challenges. I think this will also come with challenges. Sometimes they are overstated, in other times they are overlooked. But the big point is, to the extent that Kenya's main economic policy challenge is to create jobs, I'm glad that the convergence of technology and manufacturing will actually be a net creator of jobs. So that gives us more reason to actually be hopeful that all this will ride in the right ways. So thanks a lot on behalf of the IEA. Thank you. But just before we close, I'd like us to ask the CEO of CAM, Phyllis, to close this meeting and also to invite us to another meeting tomorrow that will be hosted by CAM, I think on another equally important issue of taxation. So thanks a lot, everybody. On behalf of the IEA, thank you, and I'm grateful for the 4 speakers who came in. So Phyllis, please close the meeting and let us have it.
No, thank you very much, Kwame. I think very good discussions, a lot of opportunities if the right policies are in place, and really the convergence is amazing and its ability to create these opportunities. So thank you all for participating. Thank you everyone for your time. And as an association, we'll pick up the things that have come out of this from a policy angle and advance them. And I know IEA will also join us to do that. Tomorrow we will have a webinar on minimum tax at 11 in the morning. So please join. On our different platforms, we have circulated the information. But if you don't have it yet, do reach out to us and we'll share it with you. A very important conversation on a tax that is supposed to come in place in January, and we want to share our views and have discussions. So it will be KM and other associations. ISPAC chair will be there, the chair of the Law Society of Kenya. I know Kwame will also be one of the contributors, our chair, Mushai Kunya, and others. So please join us tomorrow. Thank you for your time. We've gone above by 5 minutes, but really, thank you so much for your patience and for participating today. God bless you all. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.